I want you to think right now about the absolute most exhausted you have ever felt in your entire life.
Oh, wow.
Like, think about a time when you were just completely fundamentally depleted.
Right.
Maybe it was intensely physical, like, I don't know, the final miles of a grueling race, or dragging yourself through a physically demanding double shift at work when you were already running on empty.
Yeah, or even mental exhaustion.
Exactly. Mental exhaustion, like staring at a computer screen or studying for days on end until the words just turn into this meaningless blur and your brain basically feels like it's wrapped in lead.
Or emotional.
Yeah.
Navigating a crisis or dealing with a massive loss.
Right. Managing a situation that just drains every single ounce of your spirit.
It's a completely universal human experience. I mean, we have all hit that invisible wall.
We really have. So picture that exact moment. Picture the visceral sensation in your body when your brain started screaming, I am done. I literally have nothing left to give.
If I take one more step, I'll collapse.
Exactly. If I read one more page, I'm going to pass out.
Mm.
You have that moment in your head. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what if I told you that in that specific moment of complete and utter depletion, you had actually only tapped into 40% of your actual capacity?
It's wild. It completely shatters our fundamental understanding of human endurance.
It really does.
Because the proposition here is that in the very second you're absolutely convinced you're running on fumes, your tank is actually, well, it's over half full.
Right.
It implies this massive, untapped reservoir of potential that most of us just, go our entire lives without ever accessing.
It upends everything we think we know about our own limits, and that is exactly what we are exploring today. For this deep dive, we are pulling from an incredible set of insights summarized by the YouTube channel Mind Fuel Audio.
They did a really great job with it.
They really did. They did this extensive, granular breakdown of David Goggins' incredibly raw and transformative book, Can't Hurt Me. Now, for context, Goggins is a retired Navy SEAL, a prolific ultramarathon runner, and, arguably one of the toughest endurance athletes on the planet.
Absolutely.
But let me be incredibly clear right off the bat here. Our mission today is not just to recount a memoir.
No, not at all.
We are not here to just tell you about a guy who runs really, really far or to glorify extreme military training.
Right, because that would just be entertainment.
Exactly.
What we are extracting from this material is a highly tactical, universally applicable blueprint. We are going to deconstruct the actual mechanics of mental toughness.
Yeah.
We're looking at the architecture of human resilience, the psychology of quitting, and how you can systematically go about unlocking the potential that is currently lying completely dormant inside you.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this isn't just a toolkit for elite athletes.
Not at all.
Whether you are prepping for a massive, high-stakes boardroom presentation that could make or break your entire career trajectory, or you're studying for a licensing exam that is going to define your future.
Or, sure, trying to run a marathon.
Right, or that. The underlying neurobiology and psychology are exactly the same. And to understand how to access that hidden 60%, we have to start by understanding a specific piece of machinery inside your own head. A concept Goggins calls the governor.
A governor. Yeah, this is the foundational concept for everything else we're going to discuss today.
It really is.
To truly grasp what it is doing to you on a daily basis, we need to look at its mechanical namesake.
Like in a car engine.
Exactly. Think about a physical, mechanical governor installed in a car engine, or maybe in a golf cart or a commercial fleet vehicle.
Oh man, if you've ever driven a governed vehicle, you know the frustration.
It is so frustrating. You are driving along, you press the accelerator all the way to the floor, but the vehicle simply will not go past a specific predetermined speed, say like 25 miles an hour.
Right. It doesn't matter how hard you push the pedal.
Nope. The engine simply refuses to give you more power.
And the thing is, the engine itself is perfectly capable of going 50 miles an hour. It has the horsepower.
Oh, totally.
But the governor acts as a hard stop. It restricts the fuel flow. It basically says, nope, the RPMs are getting too high, the engine is getting too hot, we are shutting this down before something breaks.
Yeah.
It's an artificial ceiling imposed on the machine to prevent catastrophic failure.
Precisely. It is a safety mechanism. And the core argument we are analyzing today is that the human brain operates with an identical built-in mechanism.
Right.
It is a deeply ingrained evolutionary survival instinct. You have to remember, our brains evolved in an environment where calories were incredibly scarce.
Yeah, we weren't just ordering takeout.
Exactly. And physical exhaustion could easily mean death by predation or starvation. Therefore, we are biologically wired to be incredibly conservative with our energy.
So true.
The brain's primary job is not to make you successful or happy or to help you achieve your goals. Its primary job is to keep you alive.
So it's basically constantly monitoring our systems, looking for any sign that we're pushing too hard and risking our survival.
Yes. And it is highly proactive.
Right.
It doesn't wait until you are actually dying to intervene.
Right.
When you start pushing yourself into unfamiliar or uncomfortable territory, whether that is mile 10 of a run or hours 6 of intense studying or entering a room to give a highly stressful public speech, this mental governor activates.
It freaks out.
It does. It begins flooding your system with signals. It creates the sensation of heavy, burning muscles. It generates feelings of profound fatigue, sharp fear, and intense, overwhelming doubt.
Oh.
It creates a very convincing, very real physiological illusion that you have hit your absolute finite limit. But this protective instinct is severely miscalibrated for the modern world. It activates prematurely.
Which brings us to the reality check, the 40% rule.
Yes.
This is the idea that when your governor kicks in, when the alarms are blaring and your brain has entirely convinced you that you are 100% tapped out, you're really only at 40% of your true capability. And Goggins witnessed this phenomenon firsthand in the most extreme environment imaginable, Navy SEAL training. Specifically, the infamous Hell Week.
Oh, Hell Week is a fascinating psychological petri dish.
Yeah.
It is deliberately engineered to break human beings. It is a grueling, multi-day crucible of physical and mental endurance. We're talking freezing cold water, endless physical punishment, and almost zero sleep.
Sounds like an actual nightmare.
It is. But here's the thing. The military isn't really testing physical fitness during Hell Week. They are testing the governor.
Interesting.
And what Goggins observed there perfectly illustrates the 40% rule. He watched individuals who were undeniably, objectively physically capable, like Division I collegiate athletes.
Guys who are in peak physical condition.
Exactly. Guys with the muscle mass, the VO2 max, and the physical stamina to easily complete the required physical tasks. And he watched them simply quit.
Wow.
They walked up, rang the brass bell to signal their withdrawal, and walked away.
So they didn't quit because their bodies actually broke down.
No.
They didn't quit because their muscles tore or their hearts gave out.
Exactly. Physiologically, their bodies had plenty of energy left. But their minds gave out.
Their governors kicked in?
Yes. Their mental governors amplified the discomfort, projected it into the future, and convinced them that they could not take another step or endure another cold wave.
Right.
The brain threw up the stop sign, and they believed the illusion. They accepted the 40% limit as absolute reality.
And he experienced this himself on a massive scale during his first major ultramarathon.
Oh, the San Diego race.
Yeah. Let's look at that specific event because it's a perfect case study. So he is running a 100-mile race to qualify for an even bigger race.
Right.
And he is heavily underprepared physically. He hits the 70-mile mark. 70 miles.
Just thinking about that makes my legs hurt.
I know, right? And at this point, his physical state is catastrophic.
Yeah.
He is essentially experiencing multiple system failures.
Yeah.
He is dehydrated, his muscles are cramping violently, and he is quite literally unable to stand up. He feels like he cannot take a single agonizing step forward.
He's done, or so he thinks.
Exactly. But he sits there and he analyzes his own mind. He recognizes that while his body is in tremendous pain, the voice telling him it is impossible to continue is the governor throwing up a false stop sign.
It's just an alarm.
Right. By consciously recognizing the 40% rule, he manages to override the biological panic, get back on his feet, and finish the remaining 30 miles.
Which demonstrates that the limitation was primarily psychological, not physiological.
You know, I like to think of it like your smartphone.
Okay, how so?
Well, we've all had this happen. You're using your phone, maybe navigating somewhere important, and suddenly it abruptly switches to low power mode.
Oh yeah, the worst.
The screen dims, the background apps shut off, the processor slows down, and you get this urgent red battery icon.
Right.
But if you actually look at the percentage, you still have a 40% battery charge left. The phone isn't dead, it's just panicking prematurely.
That's a great way to put it.
It is aggressively conserving energy because it doesn't know when you are going to plug it in next.
That is an incredibly apt analogy for human neurobiology. The brain is aggressively hoarding resources because it is predicting a future crisis that likely doesn't exist.
But hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second because we cannot just casually dismiss pain.
Okay. Yeah.
Pain is a legitimate, critical, physiological warning sign. I mean, if I accidentally put my hand on a hot stove, the intense pain is what tells my brain to yank my hand away before the flesh literally burns off to the bone.
Very true.
If I am running and I feel a sharp tearing sensation in my knee, ignoring that isn't mental toughness. It's just reckless stupidity that will land me in the hospital.
Absolutely.
So how in the world are we supposed to differentiate between the governor throwing a false premature alarm and actual dangerous bodily harm?
See, what's fascinating here is that this is the essential crux of the issue. You have to understand the psychology of the comfort zone and how it warps our perception of risk.
Okay.
You are entirely correct that acute, sudden, sharp pain, like a torn ligament or burned hand, is a necessary biological signal.
Right.
You should not ignore an acute injury. But the governor does not operate on acute pain. The governor thrives on a very different kind of sensation.
Like what?
The pain of prolonged, dull exertion, the friction of the unfamiliar, the heavy discomfort of muscular fatigue, the psychological fear of judgment, failure, or embarrassment.
So it's confusing discomfort with actual damage?
Yes, the human brain, remarkably sophisticated as it is, actually struggles to differentiate between the life-threatening, existential danger of a predator on the savannah and the non-lethal psychological discomfort of running an extra mile or pulling an all-nighter or bombing a public speech.
That is so weird to think about.
It is. But to the primitive parts of our brain, specifically the amygdala, it all registers as a threat to survival. It equates discomfort with danger.
Oh, wow. So just because an experience is highly unpleasant, the brain fundamentally assumes we are dying and pulls the emergency brake.
Exactly. And the material we are analyzing points out something deeply troubling about our current environment. Modern society has severely, perhaps permanently, exacerbated this sensitivity.
How so?
Well, think about the world we live in today. We exist in an era of unprecedented convenience, engineered safety nets, and constant gratification. We are collectively addicted to comfort.
Oh, 100%.
We have climate-controlled homes, instant food delivery, ergonomic chairs, and endless digital entertainment to distract us from any negative emotion.
Right.
The vast majority of people rarely, if ever, have to be genuinely physically or psychologically uncomfortable.
We've basically engineered friction out of our daily lives.
We have. And because we avoid discomfort so successfully, our mental governors have become incredibly weak and hypersensitive. The threshold for what triggers that low-power mode panic has dropped significantly.
That makes sense.
100 years ago, the governor might kick in after 12 hours of manual labor in the sun. Today, the governor kicks in when the Wi-Fi is slow, or when a workout gets slightly hard after 20 minutes, or when we have to have a difficult conversation with a colleague.
Wow.
We retreat into our bubbles at the first sign of friction, and it is costing us our growth.
Okay, I buy that completely. We are softer because our environment is softer.
Yeah.
But if my instinct is to just use sheer willpower to push through it, I know from experience that willpower eventually depletes. Like, I'll crash.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we systematically break through it? Because just consciously knowing the 40% rule exists doesn't magically anesthetize the pain when I'm at the gym or when I'm staring at a blank screen at 2 a.m. trying to finish a massive project.
No, it doesn't. Willpower is a finite resource. You cannot rely on it long term. Overriding the governor requires acute self-awareness and a deliberate protocol.
Okay, what's the protocol?
The first step in the blueprint is what is termed a mind audit. You have to become an active observer of your own thought processes.
A mind audit.
Yeah. You need to spend time forensically reflecting on the moments when you have recently given up, quit, or avoided a challenge. You have to ask yourself, with brutal objectivity, was I truly at my absolute physical or mental limit, or did my mind simply spin a convincing narrative to make me stop?
Oh, I see. So you have to catch the governor in the act of lying to you.
Yes.
You have to recognize the internal monologue, that voice saying, I've done enough for today, or this is too hard, or I'm going to hurt myself.
Precisely. Once you can identify that specific voice as the governor and not as absolute truth, you can begin to actively reframe the sensation of pain or discomfort.
Reframing the pain. Viewing the friction not as a signal to abort the mission, but as tangible evidence that you are actually expanding your capacity.
Yes. The methodology here is called incremental overload.
Like in weightlifting.
Exactly. It is borrowed from strength training but applied to the mind. You do not try to jump from 40% to 100% overnight. That will break you.
Right.
Instead, you push just slightly, incrementally beyond your current perceived limit to gradually expand your tolerance for discomfort.
Give me an example.
Well, if your mind screams at you to stop running at 3 miles, you run 3.1 miles. If your brain tells you that you cannot study for more than an hour without losing focus, you force yourself to study for an hour and 10 minutes. You endure the panic for an extra 10 minutes.
I love that. You are systematically proving to your own brain through empirical data that the discomfort will not result in death.
Exactly. You are rewriting the algorithm. You are teaching the amygdala that it doesn't need to hit the panic button quite so early.
I love the concept of incremental overload. It makes this massive mountain seem approachable. You don't have to go out tomorrow and run 100 miles on broken legs.
No.
You just have to do one more rep, read one more page, make one more sales call. But here is the critical pivot in this methodology. Knowing the 40% rule, doing a mind audit, understanding incremental overload, absolutely none of that is going to work if you are fundamentally lying to yourself about where your starting line is.
So true.
If your foundation is built on delusion, the structure will collapse. To override the governor, you first have to aggressively confront your own reflection.
Which brings us to the psychological cornerstone of this entire transformation. It is a practice known as the accountability mirror. Without this, everything else is just motivational fluff.
The accountability mirror. It sounds intimidating, and frankly it is.
Very.
This is the practice of stripping away all the comforting excuses, all the rationalizations, the socially acceptable lies we tell ourselves, and facing your deepest flaws and truths head-on without a single ounce of sugarcoating.
Understand the power of this tool. We have to look at the baseline reality of Goggins' life before he became a SEAL.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
He was not born with an iron will. He wasn't a naturally gifted athlete. The reality was starkly different.
He was struggling.
Deeply. He was severely overweight, approaching 300 pounds. He had a profound lack of formal education, struggling to read at a high school level.
Wow.
He had no direction, no ambition, and he was working a dead-end, low-paying job as an exterminator, spending his nights spraying restaurants for cockroaches.
Yeah.
He was profoundly depressed and stuck.
And crucially, he was full of excuses, valid excuses in many ways.
Yes, very valid.
But he reached a breaking point where he had an epiphany. Blaming his circumstances was completely useless. Blaming his traumatic childhood, blaming the systemic racism he faced, blaming his bad luck or the people who had wronged him, even if those things were undeniably real and unfair, was entirely futile.
It didn't change anything.
Exactly. The blame wasn't fixing his life. It was just keeping him trapped at 300 pounds, spraying for bugs.
Blame is a psychological sedative.
A sedative. That's a good word for it.
It is. It's deeply comfortable because it shifts the burden of responsibility and the burden of change onto someone or something else.
Right.
If my life is bad because of the economy, or my boss, or my parents, then I don't have to do the terrifying work of changing myself. I could just be a righteous victim. The accountability mirror is the violent rejection of that comfort. It demands absolute, uncompromising ownership of your current reality.
And he didn't just do this as some vague mental exercise. He literalized it.
He did.
He stood in front of his actual bathroom mirror. He took a stack of sticky notes, and he wrote down his harshest, most brutal realities. If he was fat, he wrote down, "I am fat." If he was uneducated and failing, he wrote down, "I am uneducated."
No sugarcoating.
None. He stuck them to the glass, so he had to stare at them every single morning and every single night. He created an environment where he could not hide from himself.
But the brilliance of the accountability mirror is not just in the brutal honesty. If you stop there, you just have a mirror full of insults.
Right, which isn't helpful.
Not at all. What makes it a tool for transformation is that alongside those harsh truths, he wrote down highly specific, measurable, and actionable goals to correct the deficits.
Right. It wasn't just, "I am out of shape." It was, "Wake up at 5 a.m. every single day and run."
Exactly.
It wasn't just, "I am uneducated." It was, "Study for the AFAB for 4 hours tonight."
Yes.
For context, the AFAB is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. It's the rigorous, standardized test you have to pass to get accepted into the military, let alone the SEALs. And he had failed it multiple times because he simply didn't know the material.
The sticky notes bridged the gap between his current painful reality and his desired outcome. And that daily visual confrontation is critical.
Yeah.
By standing in front of that unfiltered reflection every day, he forced a daily accounting of his actions. If a sticky note said, "Wake up at 5 a.m. to exercise," and he hit snooze and slept until 7 a.m., The mirror didn't let him rationalize it.
You can't lie to the mirror.
You can't. He couldn't say, well, I was tired from work. The mirror just reflected the tangible evidence of his lack of effort. The excuses lost their psychological power because the physical evidence of his failure was staring him in the face.
Wow.
This obsessive daily practice of holding himself to the fire is what fundamentally allowed him to lose over 100 pounds in a span of just 3 months and study enough to pass the ASVAB, qualifying him for SEAL training.
Okay, I understand the mechanics of it, but I have to ask about the psychological toll.
Okay.
Because if I told a friend to go stand in front of a mirror and write down every single one of their flaws, their failures, and the things they hate about themselves, a therapist would probably tell me I'm being abusive.
Sure.
How do you practice this level of brutal honesty without just spiraling into a toxic, paralyzing pit of self-shame? I mean, for a vast majority of people, doing this would just completely crush their self-esteem and make them want to give up even more.
This raises an important question, and it's actually the most common and most dangerous pitfall of this exercise. We must draw a massive, incredibly thick line between shame and accountability.
Okay, what's the difference?
They are fundamentally different psychological states. Shame is inherently tied to your identity and your self-worth. Shame says, I am a fundamentally bad, broken, or worthless person because I am overweight, or I am inherently stupid because I failed this math test.
Right.
Shame is a paralytic. It offers no path forward because it attacks the core of who you are.
It tells you that your current state is a permanent character flaw.
Exactly. Accountability, however, is entirely detached from your inherent worth. Accountability looks at the data objectively. It says, I am a worthy human being, but I am currently overweight solely because of my daily dietary habits and my lack of movement. And because my habits are the cause, I am the only one who has the power to change those habits.
I see.
Accountability is empowering because it places the locus of control entirely within your own hands.
That makes so much sense. It's separating the who I am from the what I am currently doing.
Exactly. The sticky notes were never designed to be instruments of self-torture. They were strategic action plans. They highlighted the deficit, yes, but they immediately outlined the path to eliminate that deficit.
Right.
Furthermore, the material highlights a crucial balancing mechanism, constructive self-talk. While you are standing there being brutally honest about where you are failing, you must simultaneously, aggressively affirm your absolute ability to change.
Okay.
Goggins would look in that mirror, staring at a reflection of a man who was over 100 pounds overweight, and out loud he would say, I can become a Navy SEAL. At the time, looking at the data, that goal was absolutely absurd. It was laughable. But he forced his brain to accept the possibility.
So it's this intense psychological paradox. You are forcing your brain to hold two conflicting thoughts simultaneously.
Yeah.
Thought one, I am currently falling incredibly short. My habits are garbage, and I have nobody to blame but myself. Thought two, I have the absolute, undeniable power to change this reality, and I'm going to do the work, starting right now.
It is the ultimate antidote to the victim mentality. And this practice scales to every single aspect of your life. It is not just about weight loss or extreme fitness. You can use the accountability mirror for your career trajectory, your marriage, your financial situation.
Let's create a hypothetical to ground this for the listener.
Okay, let's do it.
Say you are working in a corporate office. You are up for a major promotion, let's say director of marketing.
Right.
You want it, you think you deserve it, but the promotion goes to your colleague instead. What happens? Your brain immediately goes into ego defense mode.
Of course.
It creates a comfortable narrative. You tell yourself, the boss plays favorites, office politics are so toxic, my colleague kissed up to management, the system is rigged against me.
And you know what? All of those excuses might even have a grain of truth to them.
Right.
But they are useless. They keep you stagnant.
Exactly. The ego protects itself by externalizing the failure. The accountability mirror forces you to look inward and ask the terrifying questions.
Like what?
Did I actually put in the extra hours on that big campaign? Or did I leave at 5:00 p.m. every day? Did I proactively communicate my value and my metrics to the executives? Or did I just quietly expect them to notice me? Have I actively upgraded my skill set in the last year? Am I truly, undeniably indispensable to this company?
And when you answer those questions honestly, you usually find that you left a lot of effort on the table. You realize you are operating at 40%.
Yeah.
And suddenly, you aren't a victim of an unfair boss anymore. You are in control. You write on your sticky note, take a course on advanced data analytics, schedule a weekly one-on-one with the VP, You are back in the driver's seat.
It is a radical reclaiming of your own agency. But let's be real about what happens next.
Right, because it's not a fairy tale.
Exactly. You do the mind audit, you look in the mirror, you write the sticky notes, you strip away the excuses, and you set these brutal, necessary goals. You decide to wake up at 4:30 a.m. to hit the gym. Or you decide to spend your weekends studying for that certification instead of going out. You go to sleep highly motivated.
And then?
Then the alarm goes off at 4:30 a.m. It's pitch black outside. It's freezing cold. Your bed is warm.
Motivation vanishes.
It completely evaporates. The mirror doesn't magically make the cold go away. Executing the plan is going to cause immense friction. It is going to hurt, which means if you don't want to quit on day 2, you need to build a defense mechanism against that pain. You need armor.
And that leads us to the physical and neurological adaptation required to sustain this lifestyle. The concept of developing a calloused mind. This is the engine of sustained resilience.
This concept is fascinating to me because it attacks a huge misconception in our culture. We tend to look at elite performers, SEALs, Olympians, top CEOs, and we think, wow, they were just born with incredible grit. They just have a genetic disposition for mental toughness.
Right, the talent myth.
Yes. But the core argument here is that mental toughness is not an innate genetic trait. You aren't born with it. It is entirely forged. It is manufactured through deliberate, repeated, and voluntary exposure to friction, adversity, and discomfort.
It is a process of biological and psychological adaptation.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the physical analogy here. Think about your hands.
Okay.
If you spend your life typing on a keyboard, your hands are soft. If you decide you want to become a powerlifter and you go to the gym and grab a heavy knurled steel barbell, it is going to tear up your skin. It will hurt. You will get blisters.
Absolutely.
Now you have 2 choices. You can stop lifting, or you can put on thick, padded gloves to avoid the pain. In both of those scenarios, your hands remain soft. The only way you get physical calluses is by gripping the rough steel over and over again, day after day, without gloves. The skin breaks down. The body registers the friction as a stressor, and it adapts. It literally grows the skin back thicker, harder, and more resistant to the friction. Your mind operates on the exact same adaptive principle.
It is the perfect biological equivalent. Neuroplasticity works similarly to skin and muscle tissue. Mental calluses develop through the intentional endurance of stress.
It's basically reps for your brain.
Exactly. Every single time you face a challenge that makes you want to quit and you consciously choose to push through it, you are adding a microlayer to your mental callus. You are physically rewiring the neural pathways in your brain to become less reactive to pain, fear, and doubt. But doing this requires a fundamental radical shift in how you philosophically view suffering.
Right. Normal people view suffering as an obstacle. It is something to be minimized, medicated, or entirely avoided at all costs. But in this framework, suffering is the actual catalyst for transformation. It is the tool you use to carve the statue.
To illustrate the extreme end of this, the material delves into Goggins' preparation and execution of the Badwater 135.
Oh, man.
For context, this is an ultramarathon that takes place in Death Valley, California, in the dead of summer, where temperatures routinely exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is just insane.
It is. The race starts below sea level and ends halfway up Mount Whitney. It is widely considered one of the most grueling, dangerous foot races on the planet. During his qualification and the race itself, he subjected his body to catastrophic damage. We are talking about running on multiple broken toes, running with severe stress fractures in his shins.
Duct taping his feet.
Yes, taping up his feet with duct tape because the skin was sliding off. He pushed himself to the point of literal kidney failure.
Now, obviously, a massive disclaimer here. We are not sitting here advising anyone to go out and run until their kidneys shut down. That is extreme to the point of being medically dangerous.
Please do not do that.
Right. But the reason it's brought up is to illustrate the sheer, unbelievable power of a calloused mind. It shows you the absolute outer limits of what the human body can be forced to endure when the mind simply refuses to accept the governor's stop signs.
It is an extreme data point proving the concept. But the callousing process is not just physical. Perhaps more importantly, it is emotional and psychological.
Oh, this is heavy.
The material explores how he utilized his immense childhood trauma. He did not grow up in a supportive environment. He grew up in an abusive household, subjected to violence. He dealt with crushing systemic poverty. He faced severe racism and relentless bullying.
Yeah.
Usually, trauma of that magnitude breaks a person. It becomes the ultimate valid excuse for why they cannot succeed in life. But instead of letting it break him or succumbing to toxic anger and despair, he transmuted it. He used the emotional pain as high-octane fuel.
He weaponized his own trauma. Instead of saying, I am broken because this happened to me, he said, because I survived that hell, I can survive anything this race or this test or this life throws at me.
Exactly.
But how do you actually operationalize that? When you are in the moment of extreme suffering, when you are at hour 3 of a licensing exam and you can't focus, or you're on mile 20 of a marathon and your legs are cramping, how do you actually tap into that mental armor? How do you access the callus when you want to quit right then and there?
Well, the material details a specific cognitive technique called the cookie jar.
The cookie jar. Okay, break this down.
The cookie jar is a brilliant cognitive behavioral tool. It is essentially a mental repository, a curated database of your past successes, the major obstacles you've overcome, and specifically the times you successfully pushed past your governor.
Let's talk about the neurological mechanics of why the cookie jar works, because it's not just positive thinking.
No, it's very tactile.
Right. When you are at the end of your rope, your brain is drowning in stress hormones like cortisol. You are in a pure fight or flight state, which is governed by the primitive amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of your brain that knows you need to finish this task, is effectively being hijacked and shut down by the panic. You cannot simply reason your way out of that biological panic. You can't just tell yourself to calm down.
Exactly. The brain demands proof. You have to feed it undeniable, empirical evidence that it is capable of surviving the current stressor.
Yeah.
The cookie jar is not filled with generic affirmations like, I am a strong person. It is filled with highly specific historical data points from your own life.
Give me an example of how you use it.
So when the panic sets in, you mentally reach into the jar and you pull out a specific memory. You say, on November 12th of last year, I stayed awake for 36 hours straight to finish that impossible corporate merger. I felt exactly like this. My brain told me I was going to collapse, but I didn't collapse. I survived it and I succeeded. By forcing your brain to recall and process that specific historical victory, you interrupt the panic loop. You literally shift cognitive activity back toward the prefrontal cortex. You use your own history to prove to the governor that it is overreacting.
It's using your own resume of suffering to calm your nervous system.
I love that. We survived that hell, so we can definitely survive this inconvenience.
Precisely. And this directly ties back to the concept of incremental overload we discussed earlier. You do not build a massive bulletproof mental callus all at once. You build it through deliberate daily repetition.
Right.
The blueprint demands that you deliberately seek out microdoses of friction in your everyday life. This means making choices that make you slightly uncomfortable.
Like cold showers.
Yeah, it could be taking a freezing cold shower for 2 minutes every morning. It could be voluntarily taking on a complex project at work that makes you feel intellectually out of your depth. It could be finally initiating a highly uncomfortable emotional conversation you've been avoiding with a family member.
Just leaning into the discomfort. Every single time you choose the path of friction over the path of comfort, you add a micro layer to your mental callus.
Yeah.
You are systematically training your nervous system to stop panicking in the face of adversity.
But I think it is absolutely crucial to interject here, because relying solely on raw suffering, sheer grit, and a heavily calloused mind is incredibly inefficient and, frankly, kind of dumb.
It's very risky.
Yeah, running headfirst into a brick wall over and over again just to prove to yourself that your skull is thick enough to take the impact is just masochism. It leads to burnout and injury. Unless there is a highly strategic, calculated blueprint behind the effort, the suffering is wasted.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to a massive, vital pivot in the material. The power of relentless preparation, visualization, and becoming what Goggins calls armed and dangerous.
This section shatters the prevalent misconception that extreme performers just run on pure, chaotic adrenaline and grit. The reality is the exact opposite. True resilience relies on meticulous, almost obsessive strategic planning and foresight. The concept of being armed and dangerous means being fully, comprehensively equipped mentally, emotionally, logistically, and physically to handle highly unpredictable adversity. You're not just tough, you are prepared for war.
I love that phrase, armed and dangerous. It completely shifts your posture from defensive to offensive.
It does.
And a huge component of this arsenal is visualization, but the material is very specific here. It is not the fluffy New Age visualization where you just imagine yourself sitting on a beach with $1 million and waiting for it to manifest.
No. Right.
This is highly tactical, practical visualization. Yes, he visualized his success. He vividly rehearsed what it would feel like to stand tall with his fellow SEALs after surviving Hell Week. He imagined the exact sensation of crossing the finish line at Badwater. But critically, and this is where most people fail, he spent just as much time vividly visualizing the worst-case scenarios.
Visualizing the worst-case scenario is what separates mere hope from true tactical readiness. Let's look at the psychology of why this works.
Okay.
Fear is largely driven by the unknown. When you encounter a sudden, unexpected obstacle, the cognitive load required to process the surprise, manage the fear, and invent a solution on the fly is massive. That spike in cognitive load is what triggers the governor to shut you down.
You just get overwhelmed.
Yes. But when you systematically imagine the obstacles in advance, when you vividly picture the intense pain, the specific things that will inevitably go wrong, the moments you will want to quit, you are emotionally familiarizing your nervous system with the trauma before it actually happens.
It's exactly like playing a highly complex, incredibly difficult video game.
Okay, I like this.
Think about fighting a massive boss at the end of a level. Tactical visualization is like studying the boss's attack patterns on YouTube before you ever pick up the controller. You study the video and you say, okay, in phase 2, the boss always unleashes a massive unblockable fire attack from the left. You memorize that. So when you are actually playing the game and phase 2 hits and the screen fills with fire, your heart rate doesn't spike. You aren't surprised. You don't panic and drop the controller. You simply say, there's the fire attack I knew was coming, and you calmly execute the dodge maneuver you already planned. You are ready for the friction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is an exceptional analogy. By preemptively experiencing the failure and the pain in the safety of your own mind, you are effectively disarming the governor. You rob the obstacle of its shock value.
Yeah.
The material highlights a profound example of this. Goggins had a deep, paralyzing fear of water before joining the military, which is obviously a massive liability if you want to be a Navy SEAL.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. He didn't just hope he would be brave on the day of the test. He spent hours mentally walking through the exact biological panic he would feel. He vividly imagined the terrifying sensation of being pinned underwater, of his lungs burning, of feeling like he couldn't breathe.
That's intense.
He rehearsed his emotional and physiological response to that specific panic. He practiced staying calm in his mind. So when he was finally in the pool, being held underwater by instructors, the terrifying panic was a known, familiar entity. He had already fought that battle and won it in his mind.
And the preparation wasn't just mental gymnastics. The logistical and physical preparation was totally relentless. The material provides a great look into his daily routine during this phase.
It was exhausting just reading about it.
Truly. Remember, he was preparing for the rigorous military aptitude tests and trying to lose 100 pounds while still working long, exhausting hours as a pest control technician.
Right.
It would have been incredibly easy and socially acceptable for him to say, I work a hard physical job. I'm on my feet all day. I'm just too tired to study or train right now. But because of the accountability mirror, he adopted a zero-tolerance policy for excuses. He fundamentally reorganized his life to find the time. He woke up hours earlier. He trained late at night. Furthermore, his physical preparation was highly strategic. He didn't just run to get fast. He prioritized endurance and load-bearing over speed because he studied the SEAL pipeline and knew the tests were entirely about outlasting the pain and carrying heavy objects, not sprinting a fast mile.
His preparation was surgically tailored to the specific, unique nature of the adversity he knew he was going to face. And this is exactly how anyone listening to this can apply the armed and dangerous philosophy to their life tomorrow.
How so? Give us an example.
Let's return to the corporate presentation hypothetical. If you have a high-stakes pitch to the executive board, being armed and dangerous doesn't just mean memorizing your slide deck. That's baseline.
Right.
Being armed and dangerous means sitting quietly the night before and visualizing the projector violently crashing and deleting your slides.
Yeah, the worst nightmare.
Exactly. It means vividly imagining the most hostile, aggressive executive in the room interrupting you on slide 2 with a complex question you do not know the answer to. You mentally rehearse the feeling of your face flushing with embarrassment.
Okay, and then what?
But then you rehearse taking a slow, deep breath. You rehearse looking them in the eye and calmly saying, "That is an excellent question. I don't have the exact data point in front of me, but I will pull the analytics and have a report on your desk by 2 p.m.
That is brilliant.
When you meticulously prepare for the friction loses its power to derail you. It just becomes another step in the process.
That is so incredibly practical because the harsh reality of life is that even with the thickest mental calluses, and even if you are perfectly armed and dangerous with meticulous preparation, reality is eventually going to punch you in the mouth.
Oh, it will.
You are going to fail. Things will go wrong. And according to the blueprint we are analyzing, what fundamentally separates the 40%ers from the elite 100%ers is exactly how they handle the psychological aftermath of the fall. This brings us to a crucial paradigm shift, reframing failure from a fatal blow to a necessary stepping stone.
Failure is arguably the most stigmatized, misunderstood concept in our modern culture.
Definitely.
The material astutely points out that we are subjected to deep, pervasive social conditioning from a very young age that ruins our relationship with failure. In school, a failing grade is a mark of shame. In sports, losing is a disgrace. In the corporate world, a failed project can ruin a career.
We're terrified of it.
We are. We are conditioned to equate failure with inherent weakness, lack of intelligence, or personal inadequacy. This toxic conditioning creates a profound, paralyzing fear of failure in adulthood. It leads to a state where people simply refuse to take the necessary risks required for growth. They actively choose the safe, predictable misery of mediocrity because it protects them from the ego-bruising sting of a setback.
But in the Goggins framework, failure is viewed through a completely inverted lens. Failure isn't a dead end. It is life's most precise, effective teacher. It provides the exact data you need to improve.
And he proved it.
He did. It's important to note that he didn't just talk about this theoretically. He experienced massive, humiliating failures. The summary notes his intense academic struggles as a child. But more significantly, and this blew my mind, he failed his first 2 attempts at Navy SEAL training.
It's hard to even comprehend.
Think about the gravity of that for a second. We just spent 20 minutes talking about how much he sacrificed. He lost over 100 pounds in 3 months. He studied relentlessly to pass the ISVAB. He endured the tortures of Hell Week. And after all of that monumental effort, he failed. Twice.
Yeah.
Once he was pulled due to severe physical injury, fractured kneecaps, and another time due to a previously undiagnosed medical issue, a hole in his heart.
Think about the psychological devastation of that. For 99% of the population, failing the hardest military training in the world twice, especially due to medical and physical issues beyond their immediate control, would be interpreted as a clear, undeniable sign from the universe that it simply wasn't meant to be.
Right. I tried my best, it just wasn't in the cards.
Exactly. They would protect their bruised ego by blaming the injuries, they would adopt the victim narrative, and they would walk away feeling justified. Goggins, however, utilized a specific military protocol to process the failure. He conducted an after-action report.
An after-action report.
Yes. He sat down, removed all emotion and self-pity from the equation, and conducted a cold, clinical post-mortem analysis of exactly what went wrong. What were the specific gaps in his physical preparation that led to the injuries? What were the flaws in his mental strategy? What could he control next time?
He also utilized a concept the text refers to as revenge against failure, which I love.
It's a great phrase.
He took the profound emotional sting, the deep embarrassment, the soul-crushing disappointment of being sent home, and instead of wallowing in it or trying to numb it, he bottled it. He used it as a highly volatile, high-octane fuel to prepare for his 3rd attempt with an intensity that bordered on madness. He essentially let the failure make him obsessed.
And this is a common trait among high achievers.
Yes. The material contextualizes this by pointing out that this is exactly how historical titans operate. It mentions Thomas Edison, who famously tested thousands of different materials, failing thousands of times in a row before finding the right filament for the light bulb.
Right.
It mentions Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school varsity basketball team, a failure he used as fuel for his entire legendary career. Or Abraham Lincoln, who lost multiple political elections, failed in business, and suffered a nervous breakdown before becoming one of the most consequential presidents in history.
Yeah.
These people are not defined by flawless, undefeated execution. They are defined entirely by their sheer, relentless volume of failed attempts before they eventually broke through.
That volume is key.
So what does this all mean for us? How do we actually sit down and write an after-action report on our own failures without our egos getting in the way and making excuses? Because it is incredibly difficult for human beings to look at a disastrous failure and say, yep, that was 100% my fault. Here are my specific flaws. We naturally want to get defensive and list all the external reasons it didn't work.
It is psychologically incredibly painful. which is exactly why it requires the foundation of the accountability mirror we discussed earlier. You have to be able to detach your self-worth from the event. The absolute key to a successful after-action report, according to the methodology, is a relentless focus on process over outcome.
Process over outcome. Explain that.
You have to fundamentally redefine what success looks like in your life.
Mm.
If you define success solely as the flawless achievement of a goal, the absence of failure, then your ego will always view failure as a fatal threat. It will hide your mistakes, it will point fingers, and it will prevent you from learning. However, if you redefine success as your continuous ability to persist, learn, and adapt, then a failure is no longer a threat. It is simply a highly valuable data point that reveals a flaw in your system. This paradigm shift entirely removes the ego from the equation.
Okay, let me make sure I'm translating this correctly. It's shifting the internal monologue from, I am a total failure because my small business went bankrupt, which is a dead end. Instead, you shift to, okay, the business failed. Let's look at the raw data. I failed to properly manage cash flow in the third quarter. My marketing strategy didn't target the right demographic, and I hired too many people too quickly.
Exactly. You emphasize taking total, uncompromising ownership of the mechanical mistakes. And here is the beautiful, empowering irony of total accountability. Taking the blame is what gives you the total power to fix it.
Oh, I love that.
Right. If you blame the economy for your business failing, you are powerless because you cannot control the economy. If you blame your own lack of financial literacy, you have the immense power to buy a book, take a class, and prepare better for your next venture.
You take your power back.
You systematically analyze the setback, you identify the specific controllable factors, you adapt your strategy, and you use the emotional frustration of the failure as kinetic energy to launch your next attempt.
That is an incredibly empowering way to live. It literally takes the fear right out of taking risks. Okay, let's take a breath and track the journey we have been on so far, because we're building a complex psychological machine here.
We really are.
You have learned to audit your mind to recognize the false limits of the governor. You have stood in front of the accountability mirror, stripped away your comfortable excuses, and set brutal goals. You have built a calloused mind by intentionally seeking out daily friction. You have prepared relentlessly, visualizing the worst to become armed and dangerous. And you have learned to weaponize your failures through objective after-action reports.
It's a lot.
It is. And if you do all of this, you are now operating at a level of resilience that is completely alien to 99% of the population. But an interesting, almost paradoxical thing happens when you reach this elite level of personal development. The journey stops being just about you. Your focus shifts outward. And this brings us to our final and perhaps most important section, the ripple effect and the responsibility of empowering others.
This is a vital evolution in the philosophy. This is where the material transcends mere self-help and enters the realm of profound leadership.
Yeah.
Because true success within this framework is not isolated, selfish, personal greatness. If you build this unbreakable mind, achieve all your goals, and then just hoard that strength for yourself, you are fundamentally missing the ultimate point of the transformation.
Right.
The material strongly emphasizes that once you have unlocked your 60%, you have a deep moral responsibility to create a culture of empowerment around you. You have to uplift your tribe.
And the summary is very clear about the mechanics of how you actually empower people. Because you can't just hand someone a book and tell them to be tough.
No, it never works.
It starts with what they call walking the walk. You cannot preach mental toughness. You cannot demand accountability from your team or your children or your partner if you are secretly making excuses for yourself. You have to lead by undeniable example.
Exactly.
If your team sees you showing up early, doing the grueling, unglamorous work, owning your mistakes publicly, and never playing the victim, that energy is infectious. It naturally bleeds into the culture. You implicitly give them permission to demand more of themselves. You help them escape the victim mentality.
Assisting others in escaping the victim mentality is the core function of this leadership style. The TEF observes that vast numbers of people allow their past circumstances, whether it is genuine trauma, systemic disadvantage, or simply a string of bad luck, to permanently define their ceiling. Empowering them means helping them undergo the exact same psychological transition you did, moving from a passive victim mindset to an active survivor mindset. And sometimes, facilitating that shift requires the implementation of what Goggins describes as tough love.
Now, tough love is a tricky tightrope. How do you push people to their limits without crossing the line into just being unsupportive or harsh?
Right, because if you're just yelling at people, they're going to tune you out.
Exactly. Not everyone responds to drill sergeant intensity.
It's a very astute and necessary warning. And the material provides the critical, non-negotiable counterbalance to tough love. Profound empathy. You cannot practice effective tough love without deep, genuine empathy.
Okay, so how do you balance those?
The summary explains that true leadership in this context is leading without ego. It means entirely removing your own need for validation and putting the actual needs of the other person first. Before you can demand anything of them, you must take the time to genuinely understand their unique background, the specific traumas they carry, and the invisible hurdles they're facing.
So it starts with deep validation. You sit down with them and you say, I see you. I see that you went through something terrible or that you are dealing with an incredibly difficult situation right now, and I acknowledge that your pain is entirely real and valid.
Yes, you must validate the pain. But, and this is the razor's edge of the philosophy, you must simultaneously refuse to let those valid traumas become a permanent excuse for them to stay comfortably at 40%.
Oh, that is tough.
It is. You combine strict, unwavering accountability with deep compassion. You look them in the eye and say, your pain is real and it is unfair, but it does not define your future and it does not lower your ceiling. I believe in your potential too much to let you use your past as an excuse to quit on yourself today. Furthermore, the text provides a stark warning for leaders regarding what it calls the savior complex.
The savior complex, meaning the overwhelming temptation to just step in and do the hard work for them because you feel bad for them.
Exactly. When you possess a high capacity and you see someone you care about struggling under the weight of adversity, the natural empathetic instinct is to swoop in, take the burden, and fix the problem for them.
Right. Let me just do this for you.
Yeah. But doing the work for them is actually an act of sabotage. It robs them of the vital friction they need to callous their own minds. True empowerment is not about saving people from the fire. It is about equipping them with the fireproof suit.
I love that.
It is giving them the mental frameworks, the strategic tools, and the unwavering accountability they need to fight their own battles and succeed independently. You can guide them to their own accountability mirror, you can hand them the sticky notes, but you absolutely cannot look into the glass for them.
That is such a powerful image. You hand them the heavy barbell, you show them the proper form, you spot them so they don't get crushed, but you do not lift the weight for them. They have to feel the burn themselves.
Precisely. Because when they lift it themselves, you foster true autonomy and deep self-confidence. And when they realize their own strength, they will eventually do the same for someone else. That is how you create a true, lasting ripple effect of resilience that extends infinitely far beyond your own immediate sphere of influence.
Wow. Okay. We have covered an absolutely immense amount of psychological ground today.
We really have.
Let's do a quick cohesive recap of the tactical blueprint we've extracted before we wrap up. It all starts with the mind audit. Catching that sneaky biological governor in action and realizing that when your brain screams that you are at the end of the line, you are likely only at 40% of your true capacity.
Right.
From there, it requires the intense courage to stand in front of the accountability mirror, stripping away every single comfortable excuse and translating your brutal truth into highly specific, actionable goals. It demands that you build a calloused mind by deliberately seeking out friction and incremental discomfort every single day, using the cookie jar to short-circuit the brain's panic response. You have to become armed and dangerous by relentlessly preparing and visualizing the worst-case scenarios so that fear loses its shock value. You must learn to weaponize your failures, stripping away your fragile ego to write honest, clinical after-action reports. And finally, when you have forged yourself into something unbreakable, you have a duty to take that hard-won strength and use it to lift up your tribe with a careful, potent mixture of deep empathy and uncompromising tough love.
It is a comprehensive, biologically grounded framework for fundamentally rewiring how you interact with adversity on a daily basis.
And the material leaves us with a very direct, uncomfortable call to action, which I am now passing directly on to you, the listener. Sometime today, I want you to identify one specific area in your life where you are holding back.
Just one area.
Just one. Maybe it's a stagnant relationship, a fitness goal you've abandoned, or a career move you're terrified to make, where you have successfully convinced yourself that you are giving it 100%. But if you actually stood in front of the accountability mirror, you know deep down you are sitting comfortably in the 40% zone. Where is your governor lying to you right now?
Locating that specific lie is the crucial, necessary first step. Awareness must always precede change.
And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. Something that builds on the very foundation of everything we've discussed today. Think about the very next time you feel that sudden, overwhelming, visceral urge to quit.
We all get it.
We do. Maybe it's during a difficult workout tomorrow morning. Maybe it's right in the middle of a frustrating argument with a partner. Or maybe it's staring at a complex project at work that just seems impossibly hard. Usually, we are conditioned to view that urge to quit as the finish line. We feel the exhaustion and we think, the pain is here. I have reached the end of my capacity. But what if the next time you feel that exact exhaustion, you actively forced yourself to view it not as this finish line, but as the starting line of the remaining 60%?
It completely reframes the pain as the entrance to a completely uncharted territory of potential.
Exactly. If the pain, the doubt, and the fatigue are actually just the beginning of the real work, what hidden, capable version of yourself is waiting to be discovered in that uncharted 60%? Think back to that memory of absolute exhaustion we asked you to picture at the very beginning of this deep dive. That moment wasn't the end of your tank. That was just your governor asking you to pull over. The real question you have to answer today is, are you going to listen to the governor or are you going to keep your foot on the gas?